Good morning. I am Srinivas. I offer this paper at this institution for almost more than 5 to 6 years. And we also had one success. First time, one of my students, Richa Kulkarni, she cleared it in 2019. She came to me after the demo and said, "Sir, I want to take this paper." I said, "Think." Because this paper is simple. At the same time, it demands parallel imagination. So it is unlike other papers where you can jot down notes and reproduce. Because the nature of questions also are something that remains contemporary. So little imagination is needed. I don't say that you should be an expert. It is not testing your academic credentials. But you need a little bit of parallel imagination to understand. If you can do that, this paper will be very exciting. That also I can assure you. But I assure you that my teaching would be completely different. I'll try to create interest in this paper. Instead of me teaching you, it would be some sort of a learning together, where even you are to also reach to that level where you can reach the comfort zone of answering the questions. That's what. Thereafter, you don't need this paper. But this paper is something that impacts you, knowingly or unknowingly. The moment you step out of your home, you are part of this politics. You are part of this paper. Only as long as you remain inside, you are not. But even in the present, the state is also encroaching into your private life. So even you are not secure, even within your home. So politics is one which influences every dimension of your life. And if you have grip on this paper, it also helps in terms of expressing yourself freely, even with respect to essay. There will be 2 questions from both. Invariably, one focusing on politics. Similarly, even in GS paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, JS paper 1, you will have at least 50 marks question from politics, even with respect to history. The questions would be in the nature of understanding the political situation in the historical context. 50 marks. And paper 2 anyway is filled with politics and international relations, which also includes governance. Paper 3, economy. Even economy is where politics has a tremendous influence, at least in the post-1929 era. After the Great Depression, with the advent of macroeconomics, we find state intervention into economics. Macroeconomics itself suggests that state had to intervene. Without state intervention, economy cannot be sustained. So in the context of that, even we find political interference into the state. Whether it is in the nature of Atmanirbharatas, as identified by the government, present government in terms of intervention into economy, all this is part of your political understanding. So even economy, at least 50 to 60 marks you will find from political interference. Ethics, nothing but politics. How you have to shape yourself in terms of your interaction with others. Ethics is nothing but your interaction. Societal interaction. Human interaction is ethics. If you go and stay in some isolation in a forest, you don't need any ethics. But if you want to be part of an organized civil society, organized and civil society, then you need ethics. In the absence of ethics, you cannot continue to live. Take example, your family. There are certain inherent principles which govern your behavior. Ethics, right? Your relationship with your parents, your relationship with respect to your other siblings, they are all ethical, identified in terms of certain principles. Knowingly or unknowingly we practice. But same ethics when it extends to the extended family, outside the family. Extended family means outside the family. Then it assumes different dimension. So this is where the societal regulation comes. So even societal regulations is also part of politics. Because ultimately, the subject, what we identify as political science, is nothing but the science of dealing with public affairs. Without public, there is no politics. So we don't identify politics with your private life, your family life. Politics is only identified with your public life. So political science as a subject is the study of this dimension of interaction, how you should conduct yourself outside the family. Inside the family, you are dominated by morality. Morality identifies your conduct, but outside the family, you are governed with a different set of values and principles, and they are identified as political. So how to find a solution to the interests of the people? Because once you are outside the society, outside the family, within the family you tend to be more, altruistic, sacrificial. So you have less self-interest. Less. I don't say that we don't have self-interest. But at least as part of a family life, you have self-interest, less self-interest. But once you step out of your family life, we all have competing interests because we compete with each other. We compete with each other in terms of realizing our interest. In terms of this competition, if this competition results into a conflict, how to overcome that? This is where political. So we have created an institution in state to help us overcome our differences. State is essentially there to improve our life, help us overcome our differences. So politics cannot be identified or studied without the study of state. State helps us to maintain that order in terms of our existence. But one thing what we have to all remember is, when we talk about politics, even state comes with certain limitations. Because we are all born free and equal. Are we not? Are we not born free? We are not only born free, but we are also equal. So this is not something that is given either by the state or by society. Neither society gave you freedom, nor state gave you freedom. You are born naturally with freedom and equality. So it is the duty of the state and society to maintain them. If society fails, then state intervenes. State intervenes to maintain that equality. If society maintains, then we don't need state. If society maintains freedom and equality, we don't need state. Only when society fails to maintain, we need state. Right? So this paper essentially centers around the study of state. What is the role that the state is envisaged to play, both domestically, externally, right? So the basic idea that you have to follow is, state is there to help us life more durable, more secure, more freedom oriented, because we are born with that. We are born with that. It is not something given by anyone. So the state is there to help us realize this, enhance freedom, enhance your durable life. You have to make your life more and more secure. Clear? So this paper is essentially comprised into two, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is again divided into two, section A and section B. And each section carries equal marks. So on the whole, two papers constitute 500 marks. and 125 each for each section. So you are expected to answer at least 5 from each paper. You have 8 questions, you have to answer 5, at least 5 out of 8. So that means each question carries 50 marks. So 50, 50, 50. Whether you have the freedom to answer 3 from one section and 2 from another section, or you have the freedom to answer whichever way you want, but you have to answer 5 questions out of 8. And these 5 are not one single questions. Even these questions are again subdivided, because you have question 1 and question 5 which is compulsory in nature. So there are 5 questions asked in each, question 1 and question 5. Each is a 10-mark question. So basically they focus in terms of the concepts with respect to this. So the definition of concepts or the application of concept, the idea of a concept, how concepts evolve, they are identified as part of section 1 and section 5, question 1 and question 5, which is compulsory in nature, everyone has to necessarily answer. So apart from question 1 and question 5, you have 2, 3, 4. You have to make a choice in terms of 2 questions at least, and another 6, 7, 8. Question 6, question 7 and question 8. You have to answer at least 1 or 2. On the whole, you have to answer 5. But even these questions are not one single question. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. There is a possibility that there may be 3 questions within that question. So again, subdivided into 20 marks question, 15 marks questions 2. So total comes to 50. So it is not that you are writing only one single question for 50. So again, subdivided, 120 marks question and 2, 3, 15 marks question are part of that one single question, 50 marks. And you are also given space within. That means you are expected to write the answer within 150 words or 250 words. So there is a word limit. And because of this word limit, you cannot write whatever you want. For example, many of the students, once they see a concept, they start filling the papers. But try to understand what they want. Because one of the limitations with social sciences in particular is there is no one single answer. Because social sciences are all full of opinions. So I may have one opinion, and that opinion is a valid opinion. Similarly, you may have another opinion. Even that opinion is also valid. Because we don't form opinions in vacuum. We form opinions out of certain historical context. We fall back on history in order to shape our opinions. So each one comes with their own set of opinions, and that they consider very valid. So as long as you stick to that opinion, your answer is also valid. This is the problem with social sciences. Because in physical sciences, you have this causal law in operation. So in physical sciences, we have causal law in operation so that everything is understood in terms of cause and effect. So that is how it appears to be more fact-oriented. So the study of facts is what we identify as study of science. Because in any given situation, that appears to remain true. Fact is nothing but a self-evident truth. A self-evident truth is fact, as long as it appears to remain truth. Right? So this is how science has developed. So we call it observable knowledge. Science is also identified as observable knowledge because we can see what is happening through our senses. So any observable knowledge acquired through senses is science. And in the science, another important aspect is you are outside the experiment. When you are conducting an experiment, you are not part of the experiment. You stand outside. So you can identify easily the factual connection or the causal relationship, cause and effect. For example, H2O is water. Whenever you make a combination of these two, it always results in the same, water. So it's a given fact, self-evident truth. But social sciences are not factual knowledge. They are not the study of facts alone. They are study of values. Values means your opinions, your preferences, your choice. All these are part of your values. So if you are making a study of values, not the study of facts, then the complexity comes. Because everyone believes that their value position is the true position. I may be attracted to right-wing politics, so I may justify whatever the majoritarian state does. Whatever the policies enacted by the state, they may find a justification because I believe from the lens of, or I look it from the lens of the majoritarianism. But someone may look it from the lens of minorities. They may oppose. So there is no guarantee that everyone pursues things from one single point of view. Everyone has their own point of view. Then how to overcome this? How to overcome this? There is one single way that the Union Public Service Commission has identified. In academics, we go on into having a debate with respect to these conflicting points of view, but not with civil services. UPSC, to overcome this problem, it will ask the examiner who sets the paper to also give a model answer. What is that is expecting from that question? So the model answer is also provided. So if an answer matches with the model answer, you will get marks. Otherwise, every opinion is a valid opinion. Every answer is the right answer. Then how will you overcome this complexity? If every answer is the right answer from the subjective point of view, then how to evaluate a script based on objective grounds? Even the model answer given by the examiner is also subjective, because he is trying to develop an answer from his own point of view. When he has set a question, he is expecting an answer to be written in a certain, which includes certain points. To overcome this also, we find another trend. Closely observe the paper. UPSC never focus in terms of asking questions which are specific and particular. If it is specific and particular, then it becomes subjective. Right? Instead, they try to raise questions which are objective and general. Usually, they ask questions based on universals, not on particulars. Universals means which is generally applicable to all. Where there is some sort of a consensus with respect to everyone who continues to have an opinion. That helps us to overcome the difficulty. So questions are truly general and universal. So you don't have to worry about specifics, what exactly happens. Why I am talking about this is, for the convenience of the students, even I have divided the paper into three: classical, modern and contemporary. And in the context of this understanding, we will also identify how it is separate from classical. This is how I begin my paper. Most of the institutions, I am told, they begin in the reverse. They start with Western thought. Then they come back to the approaches. I go with UPSC because there is a pattern. There is a structure inherently involved. So we have to understand even the thinkers from that point of view. So approaches is where we have to focus on. So we have three different approaches. For our convenience, we can make any categorization. As I said, we are focusing on universals, not on any particular. So we are not confined to any particular period, right? So the categorization can be too general. So we, according to our convenience, we can create the categories, right? So from that point of view, paper 1, section A is extremely important for you. If you have grip on this paper, if you have grip on section A, you have grip on the whole paper. Rest of the paper is a cakewalk. If you can understand these concepts, section A, paper 1, you have grip on the whole paper, including paper 2. Because paper 2 also does not go anything different from the concepts. Clear? So when we start with the approaches and try to identify how they are different from each phase. How is classical different from modern, modern different from contemporary? And in order to make it easy, I always try to identify the contemporary with particulars, modern with universals. And that is the reason why in the modern phase we find meta theories like Marxism, liberalism. They are all theories developed to find a solution to the problem. When you focus in terms of universals or generals, you will always try to find a solution to the problem. But in the contemporary era, there is no problem solving. Instead, it has become problem probing, because the study has shifted from universals to particulars. For example, take example women. Under modern approach, they try to find a solution to the problems of women by extending certain rights. Liberal, economic, civil rights, economic rights, political rights, cultural rights. But in the present contemporary, women is not one single homogeneous entity. It is not a monolith. So instead, women, we started identifying in terms of particulars. So which woman we should study? If a woman as a universal, fine, we can find a solution. But if you start focusing in terms of particulars, then urban women, rural women, caste women, religious women, right? Literate women, illiterate women, black women, white women, which women? So when you try to defocus in terms of these particulars, you don't find a solution. There is no problem solving. Problem probing, create more particulars. Create more and more particulars. And that has become endless, infinite. And because of this, you don't find a solution to the present. And that is the reason why contemporary politics appear to be very confusing, uncertain. Uncertainty is there because the focus has shifted from universals to particulars. So you are not trying to identify anything in general. Category of women, no. Instead, you try to focus in terms of particulars. As long as we try to find a solution to the category of Dalits, scheduled castes, we extended reservation. But now what is created? Particulars are created. They said within Dalits, the other Dalits, Mahadalits. So when you try to identify more and more particulars, what is happening? Are you finding a solution? Or your search has become infinite? Your search has become infinite in terms of identifying different particulars. This is one of the positives and negatives of contemporary. Contemporary is positive because it is trying to highlight the more marginalized in terms of particulars. The negative because it fails to find a solution to the problem. And this was not there with the modern. Modern at least had a solution because it identified Dalits as a single category, universal category. Right? So UPSC questions are also from that point of view. When you look at the question paper, you will come to know. Refer to the questions that have come in the last 5 years, at least 3 years. You will develop an idea. You develop an idea what sort of questions are asked. Clear? So paper 1, section 1 is extremely important. Section A, if you have grip on this, because it includes all the concepts, all the thinkers. Beyond that, there is nothing. It starts with the first fundamental concept in state. Because I said politics is nothing but the study of state. So how this state has evolved in terms of its historical existence. How state was perceived in the past, how the state is perceived in the present. State is found as a utility in the past. For example, the classical thinking thought that state is there to help you or improve your quality of life. So state was considered ethical because state helped in terms of improving your quality of life. So whenever you focus in terms of quality of life, you are focusing on values, remember, not facts. Values is where the state is. But when we move to modern, the idea of ethical state is replaced by the study of power. Modern state is not a state which is grounded in ethics. Modern state is grounded in politics, and politics is something that is identified with power. And because of this, state acquired different characteristic features. So state is identified both with respect to sovereignty and territory. And they remain very important as far as both paper 1 and paper 2 are concerned. Sovereignty and territory are important because in paper 1, sovereignty and territory help to understand the domestic state. And paper 2, sovereignty and territory help to understand the external state. How the state conducts itself with respect to the other states, right? So this is why state is important concept. State is important concept as far as political theory or political understanding is concerned. Without state, there is no citizens. And how is this state pursued? There are two important streams of thought. One is liberal and the other is Marxist. Liberal considers state as a neutral arbiter. Neutral arbiter means state is there because people come with difference of opinions. People come with difference of interest into the larger society. Once they step out of their family, where you are? You are part of a society. In society, you come with differences in terms of your interests, aspirations, ideas. So state is there as a neutral arbiter. Neutral means it does not come with any specific interest of its own. It is there as an adjudicator to resolve the conflict. This is how state is pursued by the liberals. But Marxists said no, state is not a neutral arbiter. State is an instrument of exploitation. State is created to exploit the poor. Because Marxists try to identify state from class perspective. They try to identify the society in terms of class relationship. They argue that society is constituted of property class and propertyless class. And the state is created to help protect property. As long as property remains, state remains. Because state is there to protect property. And this property state will only help in terms of realizing the interest of the propertied class, exploiting the poor. So they are opposed to the idea of state as a neutral arbiter. This is what it is. If you know this, your state is there. Whether state is a neutral arbiter or state is an instrument. Instrument in the hands of a particular class. This is how this state is. Look at the questions. Questions are based on this. Right? So liberal try to identify state as a plural state, post-colonial state, feminist state. They're all extension of this liberal ideology of neutral arbiter. State is considered as a neutral arbiter. Neutral because it is rational. State is considered rational because it does not come with any interest of its own. It is there as an empire. It is there as an empire to adjudicate the disputes that are arise in the society. Liberal. Whether it respect to feminist, post-colonial or whatever it is, this is the basic idea. The extension of this idea is what we try to understand. Similarly, when the other alternate to liberalism is Marxism. Because Marxism does not consider state to be equal. They argue that there is hierarchy of relations. Society is constituted of hierarchies. And these hierarchies are created out of property relations. The owners of the property and the propertyless. So state is there only to protect private property. As long as private property remains, state remains. If you abolish private property, you don't need state. Because if everyone is equal, why do you need state? Society is sufficient. Society is sufficient to maintain equality. The Marxist. Beyond that, there is nothing as far as political syllabus is concerned. The idea of state, whether it's a neutral arbiter or a class state. If it is a class state, then there are hierarchy of relations. Clear? Then state is followed by justice. Why do we need state? To maintain justice. But justice is one word which evades any definition, because justice is relative. Justice is relative because justice is what is being denied to you. If someone is starving, then giving food is justice. But it is not justice giving food to someone who is full of food, whose stomach is full with food. It is not justice. So justice is something that is identified with respect to what is being denied. Got it? So state's role is to help you access what is being denied. Why we have state? State is there to promote justice. State is there to maintain justice. Because something is denied, and it is the responsibility of the state to help you provide with respect to what is being denied, without which justice is not done. For example, look at society. Justice is categorized in terms of various dimensions: political justice, economic justice, social justice. Political justice means where state has to facilitate equal access, equal opportunity to everyone to access political institutions. Political institutions means here your executive, legislature and judiciary. Everyone should have equal opportunity and equal access. If you are denied it, then it is injustice. So everyone should have right to vote and right to contest. If you are only provided with right to vote but not right to contest, it is injustice, because you are deprived. If you are deprived of an opportunity to contest. But if you are guaranteed both right to vote and right to contest, then it is political justice. Similarly, economic justice, equal pay for equal work. You cannot discriminate between two, men and women, for equal work. When they are working from 6 to, say, 8 hours every day, how can you have differentials in terms of wages when the nature of work is same? Equal pay for equal work is the second dimension. The third dimension of justice is social, because society is also constituted of hierarchy of values. Unfortunately, take our society. We have caste hierarchy. So presence of caste hierarchy is injustice, because you are not treating everyone equal. We have forward caste, backward caste. And if there is any marriage taking place between intercaste, then it is resulting in honor killing. That means society practices hierarchy of values. Society does not treat everyone with equality. Then state has to step in. State has to step in to promote social justice. Got it? Because you cannot maintain hierarchy. Everyone is born free and equal. If everyone is born free and equal, what these hierarchies have done is, it has taken away that freedom. And it argued that you are not born free and equal, but you are born into a caste and you are born into a family. This is where hierarchies are created. It argues that you are not born free, but you are born into a caste. And that something sustains, that something continues with you till your death. Because class relations can change. If you earn money, you can become part of an upper class or a rich propertied class, but caste not. Irrespective of your economic status, still you are identified with your caste. So social justice targets this, because until unless you overcome this, you cannot create a just society. So it is a duty of the state to overcome the differences, because we are born free. So we are not born into a caste, or we are not born into a family which comes with hierarchy of values. Clear? Otherwise, there is no justification for having a state, both as a neutral arbiter, because this is where the focus is. If the state is neutral arbiter, then it cannot side only with the patriarchy. It cannot side only with the men. It also has to focus in terms of women. Only then it can be identified as a neutral arbiter. Clear? So justice is one important dimension, because the societal values are hierarchical. And because of the hierarchy of values, we stigmatize the victim rather than the accused. Who is stigmatized? If there is any sexual offense taking place, who is stigmatized? The accused or the victim? Hierarchy of values. This has to be changed. Because we consider sexual offense as a violation of honor, not as a violation of body. In Western society, they perceive it as a violation of body. And in India, we perceive it as a violation of honor. And what is important for us? Honor. Right? So either they are unreported in the name of protecting honor, or the victim is stigmatized. Either you don't report it to the law because you are worried about your honor, or the victim stands stigmatized and the perpetrator and the accused remains scot-free because of the differences in value system. This is injustice. So this is where injustice is. So if you have to create justice social, state had to intervene. State intervention should rectify the societal practices and help arrive at a justice. Similarly, the next concept is equality. You cannot have justice without equality. Only equality guarantees absence of hierarchies. But the equality, the liberal conception of equality is only limited, because liberal conception of equality is only limited to access. So it is focused in terms of providing you access. For example, take a race. Liberals argue that equality means providing everyone with an equal opportunity to participate in the race. This is where liberal idea of equality is. But it ignores whether everyone is equal or not. Because some may be well-nourished, some are undernourished. And they are undernourished not because of their birth. They are undernourished because of the society. Society deprived them access. Their vulnerability is created out of denying access. Right? Take this example. Civil services. Some have come from the prestigious institutions in Hyderabad. Some have come from government institutions. Is it their fault for having studied in government institutions? Because society deprived them. Society deprived them access to quality education. So they stand vulnerable. Right? And that is the reason why liberal idea of providing equal access or equal opportunity is not a fair idea. Because people are there with disadvantages. And these disadvantages are not by birth but inherited. Inherited disadvantages which has deprived them access. So how can you have a fair race with a well-nourished and undernourished? Well-nourished may run 100 meters, but undernourished may collapse after 10 meters. Disadvantage. And this disadvantage is not birth, but they are made vulnerable by being deprived or inherited disadvantages. Whereas he has inherited advantages, the well-nourished, because he is born into a family which helped him to provide him with highly nutritious diet. And the other one is born with inherited disadvantages. So equality cannot be maintained when we are inherently unequal. So fair equality has to focus in terms of creating conditions of equality, so that everyone acquires a fair opportunity to contest. Fair opportunity is where equality is. Right? Similarly, we have rights. Rights are also another important concept. So rights are not something that is given by the state again. Rights have social origin. Rights originate in society. If rights are recognized by society, then the state has to maintain it. This is what made Harold J. Lasky to argue. A state is known by the rights it maintains. We may know a state as a democratic state if it maintains good number of rights. Maximum the rights, highly democratic the state is. Less the rights, highly authoritarian the state is. If you have less rights, then the state is authoritarian. If you have more rights, the state is democratic. Because rights essentially prevent excesses from the state. Rights essentially prevent state violations. If you have rights, it helps in terms of protecting yourself from state intervention. In the absence of rights, you remain vulnerable. That is the reason why rights cannot be given by the state. Rights have to be recognized by society. State only has to maintain it. But in the context of India, rights did not originate in society. So there was a need for the Constitution to guarantee them. That is the reason why this expression, Constitution guarantees rights, because they did not evolve from society. So Constitution guaranteed these rights and the state has to maintain it. If state gives you rights, states can take away the rights. If state gives you the right, state can always take away the rights. Right? But society recognizes rights, then state has to maintain it. And this is what made with respect to rights, because the problem in the present, global problem in the present is refugee. Refugee problem has a pandemic presence, impacting every city, every state. And these refugees are created because their respective states have denied them the rights. How refugees are created? You become a refugee because the state has denied you the rights. And this is what has made Hannah Arendt, the contemporary political thinker, and she herself was a refugee. She argued that we should have right to have rights. Right to have rights, so that no state can take away these rights. She makes an interesting argument. She says that after the French Revolution, when we are recognized with liberty, equality and fraternity, the French Revolution recognized them as universal rights. It said that men are born with these rights and they remain non-transferable, inalienable. These rights are there with you forever. They are inalienable. Recognizing that these rights are inalienable, it has not created any safeguard mechanism to protect them, because it considered that the rights are permanent. They remain with you. So it has not created any mechanism to protect them. And that is major cause of concern today. In the absence of any safeguard mechanism, the state is violating them. The state is depriving you with respect to your citizenship. Once you become stateless, you also become rightless, because rights are legal recognition. There are also moral rights. But when we talk about rights, we always talk in terms of legal recognition. So rights are legal in nature, where law recognizes you with certain rights. But remember, you don't use rights every day, but you should know what rights you have. Rights are not in the nature of doing. Rights are in the nature of knowing. You should know what rights you have. In case of any violation, then you can seek redressal. But if you are not aware what rights you have, then it complicates things. So rights essentially help to limit state power. Rights essentially help to limit state excesses. Rights essentially helps us to remove state, overcome state violence. Got it? So after rights, we have democracy. Even democracy is a very old concept. In 1990s, democracy was celebrated for completing 2,500 years. So it is an age-old concept. But the democracy that is practiced is different. Classical democracy is different from contemporary democracy, because classical democracy was protective and developmental. It was protective and developmental. Contemporary democracy is elitist and pluralist. The way democracy is practiced today, it is elitist. Because as an ordinary man, we can never become the prime minister. The power always remains circulating among the elites. A circulation of elites. Either the power alternates between UPA and NDA or TDP and YSRCP. Right? That means what we have created in terms of democracy, we have created elites, political elites as the governing elites. They are the ones who exercise power. Right? So the contemporary democracy is elitist and pluralist. Pluralist because it helps in terms of promoting plural representation, multi-party representation. Right? So the idea of democracy is no longer developmental. But the classical idea of democracy was protective and developmental, but not the contemporary. Right? Similarly, power, authority, legitimacy, and hegemony. These are the concepts. Power. Even power is identified in two dimensions. Power is perceived as power over. So when you look at power from the point of view of power over, we are talking about power that is used for dominance, power over someone. So here power is relative and relational. Relative and relational, power over. Power is used to dominate others. But there is another dimension to power, which is highlighted in the writings of Hannah Arendt and the postmodernists like Michael Foucault. They argue is that power is not dominance, but power is to empower. Power is to empower. Power is not used for dominance, but power is to empower. Hannah argues that power is not something that can be stored. For example, if you have a grievance, you step out to the road. You go and sit near the signal. You will be pulled out. But people with grievance, like the farmers in Maharashtra, when they started marching towards Mumbai capital, 50,000 farmers. When they started marching towards Mumbai capital, it created a power in itself. So she argues that power is sui generis. Sui generis means it will generate there and then itself in a collective. If the power is generated in a collective, the power remains as long as the collective remains. Instead of one, if you are in thousands, you are heard because there is a power behind. And this power is collective. And this collective power helps in terms of maintaining reforms. So whatever demands, whatever grievances, they can be resolved. Similarly, even Foucault talks about power to empower. Power to empower. So power to empower means power to help realize address your grievance, empowerment. Whereas the classical or traditional authority idea of power is power over. Right? Similarly, authority. Authority is legitimate where there is consent of the people. In the absence of consent, authority becomes illegitimate. If you create authority where people have consent, then it is legitimate. People do not consent to your authority, then it is illegitimate. So military coup is illegitimate because people have not given consent. But Hitler was a consent. Because Hitler acquired power through democratic means. Hitler was democratically elected. So there is consent given by the people. So it is legitimate authority. Even if he had done excesses, even if Hitler has committed excesses, it is legitimate because he was elected by the people. Whereas Musharrafs and all, they are illegitimate because they have usurped power. People did not elect them to come into power. They have taken power onto their hands. Military dictatorship, illegitimate. Clear? So power, authority, legitimacy and hegemony. Hegemony means how you create a condition for general consent. For example, you watch television, Prime time news, which news you watch? Which channel you watch? Huh? BBC? So Indian channels in particular? ETV, okay. Any national channels? If you look at national channels, there is a argument that is advanced, stating that the media in India is owned by the corporate. So it has become a corporate media. And corporate media is also identified as a Godi media. A media which is sitting in the lap of the politicians. A media which is being controlled by the politicians, Godi media. And because of this Godi media concept, you don't find any major concrete constructive debate taking place in television channels. Because they have come with one single agenda to justify majoritarianism. So anyone who opposes majoritarianism are labeled as anti-nationals. That means you are creating a hegemonic atmosphere. Hegemonic means a dominant atmosphere into the society, wherein anyone who opposes your point of view are labeled as anti-nationals, urban Naxals. So they have started labeling them. But if they accept your point of view, that means you have created a hegemony, a dominant point of view as an accepted point of view. Hegemony is nothing but a dominant point of view as an accepted point of view. Here we have another example. United States invaded Afghanistan, thereafter Iraq. Prior to the invasion, it created a hegemonic reference. It said that we are invading not to realize our own self-interest, but in the name of Operation Enduring Freedom. Operation Enduring Freedom. We want to get rid of this world from the terrorist. We wanted to make this world more peaceful and prosperous. Right? So what is the idea here? Operation Enduring Freedom. And peace and prosperity can only be sustained in the world when we demolish or when we destroy weapons of mass destruction. But in reality, America was trying to advance its own interest. But it has created a hegemonic environment where all the actions of the Americans acquired justification. Because it has argued that it is doing this under Operation Enduring Freedom. Same thing when Russia did, the world started imposing sanctions. The difference is Russia failed to create that hegemony. America successfully created a hegemony where we also supported them. Yes, what you are doing is right because the world should get rid of weapons of mass destruction. The world should get rid of terrorism. So there is a larger consensus established in the name of a hegemonic reference like Operation Enduring Freedom. But the same thing when Russia did, we are opposed to it. Fundamentally there is no difference with respect to American invasion of Iraq or Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Fundamentally there is no difference. Both are same. But America escaped without any sanctions. Russia is suffering with sanctions. Got it? So global politics, or even internationally or nationally, we have to create that hegemony. And that hegemony is advanced repeatedly in the name of Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. So you try to create some sort of a hegemonic umbrella in the name of empowerment of the poor, empowerment of the marginalized. Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. A tagline. So in this name, even if you justify majoritarianism, nobody will question. Because you are trying to create a larger environment or a larger atmosphere to promote the larger development of all. Essentially, you are trying to promote majoritarianism. Essentially, you are trying to promote majoritarianism, but it is not accepted as majoritarianism. So you invented a new phrase like New India, New Normal. New India and New Normal. So it is not something considered as abnormal. Providing justification to majority is not considered as an abnormal act. Instead, it is projected as a new normal. A new normal in New India acquires a justification, hegemony. Got it? So hegemony is something that is constructed and which becomes a dominant accepted point of view. And to legitimize that, you need media, you need the educational institution. That is the reason why there is an effort to revise the syllabus in the schools, to bring in all those nationalists who fought for Indian freedom. So we wanted to impose some sort of a majoritarian framework as an accepted framework. This is where hegemonies are constructed. Got it? So hegemony is another concept. After hegemony, power legitimate, we find the ideology, because ideology is a program of action. Ideology is a worldview. And this is where I said ideology. When you talk about ideology, there are two dominant ideologies. One is liberalism, the other is Marxism. Either you are a strong liberal or you are a committed Marxist. There is no other way. So all ideologies are an extension of liberalism. Neoliberal, liberal, neoliberal, plural, fascist, feminist, they are all extension of liberal ideology. Marxism stands separate because Marxism comes with a commitment. So ideology which has a committed activist. But Marxism is also a wide worldview. It is also a worldview. It also identifies a program of action. Both Marxism and liberalism aim at one thing. They want liberation. They want to liberate the world from exploitation. Liberal believes in gradual change. Marxism believes in revolutionary change. The end is both same, whether you look at liberals or the Marxists. Liberals want a gradual change. Liberate the world, liberate the humanity from exploitation. Marxists want revolutionary change, sudden change. Marxists argue that if you abolish private property, the world will become equal. So you are liberating humanity from exploitation if you abolish private property. So to abolish private property, we need a revolution. Marxist ideology. Liberal ideology, on the contrary, we can progress towards freedom. We can progress towards freedom by introducing certain reforms, time and again. So accordingly, they argue that the society is not static, the society is progressing in terms of its historical existence. We are on the path of progress, and the ultimate goal of progress is end exploitation. Both aim at the same thing, but the methods are different. So this is where the ideology is. After ideology, we have thinkers, Indian and Western thinkers. Indian thinkers, we have only three. The Dharma Shastras, Artha Shastra, and the Buddhist tradition. And followed by the modern Indian thought, mostly centered around colonial rule. Modern Indian thought is shaped by colonial rule, starting from Sir Syed Ahmed Khan to Gandhi. The ideas, the political ideas are centered around the idea of freedom, because we are part of a alien rule, foreign rule. So how to enhance and how to acquire freedom, this was the center of idea. So there also we had two different methods, modern thought. One subscribed to Sanatana Dharma concept, Aurobindo. because Aurobindo relied in the past glory of Indian civilization. So they wanted to revive the past into the present, which is labeled as spiritual nationalism. So Indian nationalism is identified as a spiritual nationalism trying to revive the past into the present. A trend which also significantly appears in the present regime, where we try to reinvent the Sanatana Dharma into the present, glorify the past into the present. The another stream was like Ram Mohan Roy's, who thought that we have to imitate the Western civilization. Western civilization which is more equal, more progressive than the indigenous civilization. So even modern Indian thought is shaped by these two aspects, whether to revive the past or look towards the future or look towards the present from the Western point of view. Right? Where we should be influenced with respect to these French revolutionary ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity. And beyond that, modern thought, there is nothing in modern Indian modern thought. To revive the Sanatana Dharma, this is what we find in Aurobindo, later having its expression in terms of extremist, then Gandhi. Gandhi also revived it. On the other hand, we have people subscribing to the other stream of thought, starting from Raja Ram Mohan Roy to Ambedkar. They believed in the Western thought. They believed in the Western potential to emancipation. Western ideas having the potential to emancipate the poor in India. Both. Similarly, Western thought. Western thought is also identified in terms of classical, modern and contemporary. Classical stretching from Plato to Machiavelli. Because classical thought was dominated in terms of status quo. Classical thought was focused in terms of maintaining things as it is, because they perceived that things are in a state of decay. For example, take rose. First day it appears to be very fresh. After a few days, it decays. Similarly, everything that comes into the world is in the state of decay. And they wanted to arrest that decay. The whole objective of Plato, Aristotle and Machiavelli was to help overcome the cycle of growth and decay. Everything that comes into existence is in the state of decay. How to arrest this? How to arrest this growth and decay model and restore stability? Plato's thought, Aristotle or Machiavelli. They all focused on this. Then we had a new understanding with respect to, because they did not consider it growth and decay, the modern thought, but the modern thought considered itself to be progressive. So the pillars of modern thought are created in terms of three: science, reason and progress. Scientific innovations help them to develop a new thinking, like Copernicus. Copernicus helped us to understand that the world is not geocentric but heliocentric. Not stars and sun revolving around Earth, but Earth itself is revolving around sun. A new understanding is developed, which impacted even social sciences. So we relied on science, we relied on reason. Reason because this also identified, European Renaissance. In order to identify a solution to the present problem, they try to look back into the past. How did the Greeks respond to their crisis? What did the Greeks do to find a solution to their political problem? And the Greeks essentially relied on reason and rationality. So reason is revived as part of European Renaissance. And the third pillar, progress. So they discarded this idea of growth and decay. and started believing that we are progressing. So idea of progress radically changed. So these three pillars helped us in order to identify a universals. Right? Universals because classicals thought everything is natural, which cannot be changed. Modern thought everything is artificial, which can be changed. Classical thought everything is natural, which cannot be changed. Modern thought everything is natural, everything is artificial, which can be changed. And that is the reason why they developed social contract theory. State is also something artificially created out of a contract. Society is also artificially created out of a contract. Family is also artificial, not natural. Created out of a contract. Clear? So the new perception created from natural to artificial. Everything that comes into existence is artificial. If everything is artificial, we have the power to change it. If it is natural, we cannot. But if it is artificial, we can. So this is a very powerful idea that dominated modern approach, which rejected the classical in terms of its natural existence and moved towards artificial. So everything can be created according to our own needs. We can create new institutions, new rules, right? New understandings, which will help us life more and more durable. So nothing is given, nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change. And based on this understanding, we find liberalism and Marxism. Liberals relied on property, private property as a source for liberation, and Marx used the same private property to liberate humanity. Liberals believe that without private property, there is no progress. Only when you give the right to private property, you think differently, because you always think to multiply it. So you try to innovate. That is how progress. Marx considered private property as the basic evil, societal evil. Because of private property, all societal evils. So he wanted abolition. But both recognize one thing, both recognize state is artificial, both recognize society is artificial, both recognize everything is in our hands to shape things into the future. Either the liberals or the Marxists. So this remained a dominant perception up to Second World War, end of Second World War. Then after end of Second World War, we developed a new thinking. We discontinued whatever is being identified as theory, because political theory failed to prevent two world wars. If it fails to prevent two world wars, then what to do with this theory? Dump it. Put everything into a dustbin. Think fresh. So think fresh, they said, because we could not find a solution in the past because we relied excessively on values. But if we study facts, like science, then we can also come close to the reality. So reality will be in our control if we make a study of facts rather than values. This is how contemporary approach began after the Second World War. So they dumped the values and focused on facts. And we find corporate funding this project, because facts means where the study shall help in terms of conditioning the behavior of the human being. Ford Foundation has come to assist the research program. So they started collecting more and more facts. How will you collect? By employing statistical tools. Voting behavior. Go and seek opinion of the people, conduct survey, use that inputs, tabulate them and see whether there is any pattern in the behavior of the people. Why people vote to a particular party. Seek the preferences, tabulate them using statistics, and try to identify whether there is any pattern identified. But collection of facts did not help in solving Vietnam crisis or civil war in America, the black rights movement. Then again they discarded. Without values we cannot, because when you are conducting an experiment, you are not outside the experiment, but you are part of the experiment. So even your preferences influence your decision. Your preferences influence your selection of the pattern because you come with a preconceived ideas. And when you are examining a pattern, you come with your preferences because you are part of the experiment, you are not outside the experiment. So they started focusing on problem solving rather than collection of facts. This problem solving experiment and the study should be more and more relevant. Problem solving and relevant has become what is identified as post-tag theories. So post-tag theories, we have post-behavioralism, post-structuralism, post-feminism, post-Marxism, post-modernism. They are all post-tag theories. So post-tag theories focused in terms of problem solving, but they have essentially remained problem probing because they started identifying more and more particulars. Instead of finding a solution to the problem, they try to remain more relevant. So they try to identify the particulars. For example, Dalits. In the post-independent India, we extended representation, political representation to the Dalits in India. We extended representation into education, public institutions, Dalits in India. But since 1990s, we find MRPS movement, Madiga Reservation Porata Samiti, demanding subcategorization, quota within quota. Because they argue that the benefits identified universally are not reaching to a particular caste. So the focus has shifted to the study of particulars. Similarly, when Mayawati came to power, they argued that only Jato community is benefited. Other non-Dalits, non-Jato Dalits are ignored. So the focus has shifted onto the study of those particulars, the Mahadalits, who are not part of the Jato community. Right? So likewise, there is a shift. But this shift, unfortunately, did not help us to find a solution. Instead, what happened? It created more particulars. What you will do? You create more particulars infinitely. Where is the end? Where is the solution? And that is the reason why still today we remain in an uncertain world, having no solution. Having no solution, but identifying. This is where the identity politics have come. Politics have become identities, and identities are part of culture. Clear? So section A, if you understand, rest is an extension of section A. Part B deals with India specific with respect to justice, social justice, how social justice has to be advanced, how equality, rights have to reach to the people, right? How governance should be done in India. Section B. Governance means grievance redressal. How people's grievances are redressed. Similarly, paper 2. The same concepts recur there. Paper 2 also begins with comparative politics, then moves to international politics. As part of comparative politics, here it has made a distinction. In terms of comparison, we are not making a comparison like Aristotle, because Aristotle has actually invented comparative method. Aristotle did a comparison of institutions. But contemporary comparative politics is not focused on institutions, but the study of process. So the process which includes political parties, pressure groups, social movements inside every society. How these process dynamics help in shaping the decision. This is where comparative politics is. It is not the comparison of the institutions. Comparison of political dynamics. Comparison of political dynamics in every society. How political dynamics operate in developed and developing society. How political dynamics operate in developed and developing societies is the concern of study in paper 2. And in the process, we move towards globalization. And the idea of globalization is a very powerful idea that has germinated because it successfully engulfed the whole world. Every country competed to be part of this globalization. And this globalization has resulted, the underlying principle of globalization is competitive edge. It argues that every state has a competitive edge. So try to utilize it the best. So globalization has focused in terms of these three: economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. You have to be economical, you have to be efficient, and you have to be productive. In order to realize this, you have to focus in terms of your competitive edge, because every country has a competitive edge. For example, take India. India has competitive edge in space technology, because even NASA has sent Mars Orbiter mission, MOM. India responded through Mangalyaan. But the cost of Mangalyaan is a fraction of the cost of MOM. Who has edge? Who is economical? Who is economical, who is efficient, and who is productive? India. Forcing even French satellites to be launched from Sriharikota, because we had edge. This is what globalization has advanced. Focus only on where you have edge. Don't produce everything. Right? For example, Nike shoe. Nike shoe is manufactured in more than one country, because each component of Nike shoe is manufactured in different countries. Whichever country has edge, if I have edge in sole, I will only manufacture sole, not the whole shoe. If I have edge in manufacturing lace, I will only manufacture lace. Right? Likewise, every component is manufactured in different countries, assembled together in one country and marketed. And this has promoted interdependence globally, because you have created a supply chain network, or which are popularly known as global value chains. At every point, the final product is not produced, but you are only contributing to the final product. And every country which has edge, because there is no other country in the world with the same edge, you are the best. You may be best in paddy cultivation, you may be best in rice cultivation. You are the best in the world, so you have a global market to capture, because you are economical, you are efficient, you are productive. A very powerful idea on paper, which attracted the whole world, because every world thought, yes, I have. Like for example, Scotland. Scotland has edge in Scotch whisky. No other country in the world can manufacture efficiently, economically, productively Scotch whisky as Scotland does. So other countries should not get into that, because anyway you cannot compete. So once you cannot compete, nobody will buy you. So globalization has also advanced another idea of promoting a low tax regime. If everyone should have access to every market, then the taxation should be rational. One single tax applicable to all, without any difference. Right? So it promoted a low tax regime and free movement of goods and services. This is the essence of globalization. Right? So border free economies is the idea of globalization, which has finally resulted in some sort of an understanding of a global village. They are all part of your comparative politics. Then we move to international politics. International politics are also laced by three. One is idealism, the other is realism, and the middle path, social constructivism. Idealism argues that international relations can be governed through institutions and rules. If you have fair institutions, fair rules, then order can be restored in international relations. Because in terms of relations among the nations, if you have fair institutions and fair rules, then there is order. But realism contests that. Realism argues international relations are anarchy, lawless. There is no order in international relations, but only anarchy. So every state has to develop its own self-help system, which has actually promoted this arms race. Because in order to survive, you have to develop your own capabilities. Russia, Ukraine is a classic example of realism. Geopolitics is a classical example of realism. Because in order to survive, you have to develop your own self-help system. Ukraine had nuclear arms. It has volunteered to destabilize them. And today it is suffering. Had it continued to hold on to that, Russia wouldn't have dared to touch. Got it? So global politics are identified by the realist as anarchy. And that is the reason why these major powers like Russia, America, they don't believe that the existence of the United Nations as a global policeman. They reject it. They consider the world is anarchic, where might is right. Where might is right. If you have the power, realize it. If you don't have the power, bandwagon. Bandwagon means join the power. If you have the power, assert. If you don't have the power, bandwagon. Join the race. This is how realism try to understand. So realism basically thinks the world is anarchic, whereas idealism believes that world is peace, harmony, prosperity, progress, because there are institutions, rules. And the third opposition is social constructivism. Social constructivism is a middle path between idealism and realism, wherein it argues that anarchy is what we make out of it. The world is not anarchy. But if you think the world is anarchic, it is anarchy. The world is order, it is order. So social constructivism believes that nothing is given, no structures are given. Realism believes the world structures are given, you cannot change it. No one can change it because they are permanent. They influence your decision making. But social constructivist, social means society, that means we. Construct means like artificial, we can change it. Social constructivism discards the idea of anarchy. It argues that international relations are also identified in terms of logic of appropriateness. For example, globalization. Why every country followed it? Because we saw other countries following it. So it is not power politics, but we considered it to be an appropriate behavior. So logic of appropriateness help in terms of promoting international relations is what social constructivism believes. Whereas realism argues that logic of consequence, what is that you gain, is what realism believes. Whether I stand to gain or whether I stand to lose, consequence determines my action. But social constructivism, it argues that the structure of the world is not given, but the structure also coexists with agent. There is also an agent. Agent means here, say for example, realism argued that Cold War will never end because international structure is such that Cold War will continue. But Cold War has come to an end. And because of an agent, and the agent was Russia. Russia influenced the structure. And we could overcome the Cold War and move towards a unipolar world. Why it happened? Because of the interference of an agent. And Russia is considered as an agent. And within Russia, we identify Gorbachev. Had it not been Gorbachev, it wouldn't have happened. So likewise, even in the history, there are certain figures who occupy critical positions which has shaped the course of history, like Napoleon's. By occupying a critical position in history, they have changed the course of history. History is not static. International relations is not structure that is given. It is not natural, but it can be constructed, social constructivism. So if you think it is anarchy, it is anarchy. If you think it is based on law, it is law. Right? So meaning is how we look at it. Social constructivism. These are the three major political theories to understand international politics. Clear? Idealism, realism, social constructivism. Thereafter, it is a narration. These three, how they apply to unipolar world, non-alignment, the third world, and how these global institutions are created, like United Nations, World Bank, IMF. Here we find another justification provided by realism, hegemonic stability theory. Realism argues that these institutions helped America's hegemony to continue. So United Nations, World Bank, IMF, they are all created by the Americas to perpetuate onto this world its own ideas. So the world is governed by these ideas. This is what we keep telling in international politics. One reference I keep making. I argue that Roosevelt has constructed a world order. Roosevelt has created an architecture which is easy to join but difficult to alter. Post-Second World War. Anyone can be part of this world order. Any country can join this world order. Easy to join, difficult to alter. And this is how American hegemony is established in the world. And that is the reason why no one raised any question when America dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Otherwise, it should have been tried for crimes against humanity. Similarly, no one questioned when America invaded Afghanistan or Iraq, because the institutions that are created by the Americans help in justification of American actions. This is how you have to look at international politics, paper 2. Paper 2 is more easy than paper 1, but if you understand the concepts. Clear? Similarly, when it comes to third world countries are post-colonial countries which acquired independence after the Second World War. One feature which is identified with them is they are obsessed. They are obsessed with the idea of sovereignty and territory. This obsession towards the idea of sovereignty and territory prevented any cooperation. And that is the reason why even 40% of the global poor reside in South Asia. We do not join together because we are obsessed. We are obsessed with state security rather than human security. We are obsessed with state security, protecting the state rather than the people. Whereas in Europe, they moved from state security to human security by forming into a union. Right? So industrial world moved towards a union, focusing on human security, whereas the feature of third world, we remain confined to state security because we thought freedom is very precious, which we lost. So we cannot lose again. So we remain committed to this idea of sovereignty. Sovereignty means freedom, freedom of the state, territory, and which has actually complicated the war. And finally, the era of globalization has brought another shift. During Cold War, we saw interstate conflict. But under globalization, it is intrastate conflict. The conflict has been internalized. During Cold War, the war was between Iran and Iraq, interstate. Israel, Palestine, interstate. But in the post-Cold War, war is intrastate. Civil war. Civil wars within has become a feature of Cold War. So the war is not fought in terms of interstates. There were 13 interstates war after the end of Second World War II, the introduction of globalization, end of Cold War. But post-Cold War, 36. 36 intrastate war, Yugoslavia, balkanization of Yugoslavia. It was a war within. Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Sudan, Yemen, Syria. You find all examples of war within, civil war, even Afghanistan. Got it? So the nature of conflict has shifted from interstate to intrastate because of the rise of identities. Every state, even Sri Lankan Tamils, civil war. Rohingyas, civil war. Why Rohingyas are there for almost 400 years? Why this problem has come now? Identities. Because identities are created. Once you recognize identity, you want a stake in political decision making. Whether it could be Tamil elite, Tamil ethnicity, or Rohingya crisis. The war, nature of war, has become intrastate. And intrastate war has actually resulted in the rise of culture. So the world has taken a right-wing shift. Europe has become xenophobia. Europe is experiencing xenophobia. Xeno means apprehension with respect to foreigners. You have developed a fear of foreigners because increasingly the societies are becoming multicultural because of globalization. In search of better employment, in search of better life, people started migrating. Initially it was welcome because that benefited under globalization. Now it has reached a saturation point. So you don't want migration. Europe does not want migration. So it has developed this xenophobia, where they have developed this hatred towards foreigners. And this is what is being reflected in terms of imposing bans on wearing scarf and coming to class in France. A symptom of intolerance. Liberalism stands for tolerance, and they are all proclaimed liberal societies, but continue to practice intolerance. Got it? So this is a shift that has taken place worldwide. Even Brexit is a U-turn towards turning into itself. Globalization is outward. Nationalism is inward. Brexit is inward. America first, inward. They are all identified in the present, promoting right-wing populism or majoritarianism across the world. Right? So there may be questions, even with respect to the contemporary happenings. So where you have to identify things in terms of global politics or geopolitics, geoeconomics or geostrategics. Have any questions you can ask. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Here we're studying about different ideologies, and we personally are inclined to have one particular ideology. So in that case, how...
One particular ideology helps you to better understand the world.
Yeah.
Because it is better to have an ideology rather than have without any ideology. It helps you in answer writing. At least if you say you are influenced by liberalism, then you know what liberalism is not. At least it helps you in answer writing. But if you are, say, if you don't have any, influence of any particular ideology, then you are nowhere. What you will write? It's a positive thing having a influence of a particular ideology.
What if our ideology conflicts the modern answer?
Never mind, try to remain balanced. You know that. You know that you cannot be subjective. That is the reason why first, what did I tell you? You are not expected to write subjective answers. Even UPSC questions are not subjective. Go through them. Objective. Not only for polity, every paper. Because if you want model answer, then you cannot be subject to question. What I think cannot be the base for answer, because that is subjective. What everyone thinks. Clear? So when you focus in terms of what everyone thinks, then you are meeting with the objective answer. Your preferences you have to overcome. This is what I mean. And I said model answer. Otherwise, you are stuck. You are stuck. For example, take 1948, 17 September. A controversy which is not dying even in the present. One thing happened in history. Hyderabad merged into India. But still 3 contestations. BJP argues that it should be celebrated as a liberation day. Liberation means vimochana. For them, Hyderabad is liberated from Muslim rule. It has to be celebrated. They have a reason because it was under Nizam. Justified. And similarly, the Congress argued that it has to be celebrated as an integrationist day. Vilina Dinam. Because it joined with Indian Union, we should celebrate it. Hyderabad state, which claimed a separate identity, joined with India. But the communists argue it should be celebrated as a betrayal day, Vidroha Dinam, because 10,000 communists got killed during that Telangana peasant struggle. So they have their own reason. So everyone comes with their own reason. If you are writing from the communist point of view, you will talk about betrayal day. But more balanced answer would be Vilinam, this integration day, where you are joined into Indian Union. That appears to be more balanced, because neither you are favoring with a particular community and arguing that you justify liberation because it is liberated from a Muslim rule, nor you subscribe to this idea of betrayal day because a particular ideology has influenced into a struggle, armed struggle, Telangana peasant armed struggle, where 10,000 communists sacrificed. Right, the objective answer would be, which is a historical fact, that Hyderabad is still part of Indian Union. Balanced answer is Indian Union, integration. Got it? So no model answer can go against it. But instead, if you write liberation, it may not match. Or you write betrayal, it may not match. But if you talk in terms of integration, perfectly match, because that is a reality. That's an objective reality which everyone accepts. 17 September 1948, Hyderabad joined India. Or Hyderabad is annexed into Indian Union through police action. Clear? And as far as the reading list is concerned, for section A, I suggest little complex, but Raju Bhargava and Ashoka Acharya. Raju Bhargava taught me in JNU. He taught me Western political thought. I am a student of JNU, political science, in the past, not now. So I had the privilege of having studied under him. Sudipto Kaviraj, Raju Bhargava, they in fact trained us. So Ashoka Acharya, Raju Bhargava for political theory. Indian thought, MP Singh, and Bidyut Chakravarti. Bidyut Chakravarti is a former UPSC member. Bidyut Chakravarti, Indian Government and Politics. He has written many books, but very concise and good reading, easy to understand. Unlike D.D. Basu's and your Lakshmikant's. Bidyut Chakravarti is easy and comprehensive, which helps you to understand even section B, India specific politics. Western thought and political theory, other option is O.P. Goba. If you think Ashoka Acharya and Raju Bhargava is too painstaking because it develops parallel imagination, then go for O.P. Goba, because NCERT books are also edited by Raju Bhargava. NCERT class 11 and 12 is edited by Raju Bhargava. Even if you read, you will know how these concepts are developed. Same thing is repeated in Ashoka Acharya and Raju Bhargava. And as far as Western thought is concerned, standard is Sushila Ramaswamy, Subrato Mukherjee. If you think it is high, then focus on Shefali Jha. Shefali Jha. Very analytical and easy to understand. Comparative politics, J.C. Johari. Comparative politics, J.C. Johari. And international theories, Andrew Haywood. Andrew Haywood also has written Ideologies, very good book, political ideologies. and you have it for ideologies and international theory, global politics. Or the other option is, that's enough. Don't complicate things. Then India specific, David Malone, Srinath Raghavan. And read as many as articles appear in national dailies like Hindu, Indian Express. Follow both. Because Hindu is left leaning, New Indian Express is right leaning. And create a balance between the two. You maintain a balance reading both. You will get the left point of view from Hindi, the right point of view from New Indian Express. Right? This is more than enough as far as your understanding, your preparation is concerned. And if you are part of my students, I am always there to help you. Wherever you find any difficulty in understanding any concept, any thinker, any theory, any ideology, any dynamics, I am here to help you. Clear? Did you follow the picture? How many of you? That helps me to understand assessment, whether you are body present or mind absent. Because I again repeat, in my class I will make it interesting, because otherwise I cannot teach boring. I myself don't stand to be bored. But I also expect some imagination, imaginative thinking from your point. That's the reason I again request, go through the questions. And when you are come to class, come with the previous year's questions after every topic. What are the questions that were asked and how to write? Will help you to write. Right? This is what Richa Kulkarni did. She was a computer science B.Tech. First attempt she cleared it. Write the answers. Nothing to beat your writing. You have to complete 2 to 3 books while writing yourself. And try to develop your own imaginative writing. Because if you reproduce the notes of the institution or even whatever I teach, that becomes what happens, that becomes to the examiner very monotonous. Word by word, example by example. No. Be creative. Develop your own answers. You will score high marks. If same thing is repeated, then anyone, even for the evaluator, it appears to be very monotonous. So don't follow any book. And don't follow any of the suggestions made by the toppers, because they are always deceptive. Right? Prepare yourself. How best you prepare, that all depends. I am only here to help you. So it is some sort of a learning experience together. Preparation is yours, because ultimately you have to write the answer. You can do that, you will succeed. First attempt you will clear this, no problem. And you will come with very good marks if you understand the concepts. If you internalize the concepts, that helps you, your answer writing style in all. Your essay answer writing will be completely different. Your paper 2 answer writing, parent paper, political science, paper 2 will be completely different. Even you have your influence, your imprint, even with respect to questions in ethics and economy. Clear? So focus on that. All the best. Have any questions? No? Thank you.